Hello, everyone. I think this has started. Just a second. Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Shruti Tibrewal, a trauma-informed therapist and a systemic coach. And today I will be talking about a very common practice, which is called self-love. And it is something that we hear about so often, and we have so many point of views about self-love around us from our friends and from uh, people out there, but none of us really know how to practice it, or what it really means to practice it on a day-to-day basis, or even how to practice it. So, I will be making an attempt to deep dive into the core foundation and deepening of self love as something which is supposed to be practiced on a day to day basis and is a very essential part of our lives. Many of us struggle with self love into adulthood, and this is because as children, our core need is love from our parents. And what is love for a child? What does it even mean? Love for a child is essentially survival for a child. And when we talk about love, how a child perceives love is very simple. A child perceives love in terms of attachment and authenticity. These are the two broad concepts which helps us to understand what happens when we are growing up and what happens from all the childhood experiences that we gather into our brains, into our bodies, into our systems, and how it manifests itself when we grow up and become adults. So, what is attachment and what is authenticity? So, till a certain age, when we are growing up, the only language that is essential for a child to feel safe, feel comforted, and feel okay to express themselves, their authentic selves, is by feeling the safe attachment with its parents. It is when the child feels a sense of disconnection with the parents. It is when a child feels the unavailability of their parents. They decide to shut themselves down. They decide not to express anymore, and they distort themselves in a way where they can fit into the system, where they can fit into the family, and they can be loved, and they can find a place with their parents and the entire family. What happens when they distort themselves, and why does that happen, is when we are growing up, there are a lot of times when we find that our parents are not emotionally or physically available to serve our needs and to be there and to understand what we would be needing at that time. So, one of the biggest aspects that I have realized in my work, in my own healing journey, and along with my work with the clients, that a lot of times the trauma that a child experiences in terms of shutting themselves down and not expressing what they want to is unintentional. A lot of the impact that the child goes through is seen to be unintentional. And let me give a couple of examples around unintentional trauma. And one of which is, say, a child who is 3 years old finds that her or his or her mother has fallen sick and has to be admitted in the hospital or has to be taken care of and is not available for the child. Now, this is completely unintentional, and there is no one to be blamed here, and no one to be, there's no one to point fingers at over here. But it is still an overwhelming threat for the child. It is still a trauma experience for the child, because trauma is essentially not about the event that takes place out there. It is about the perception of that event that takes place within me, and how I choose to process it within my space. So, most of the times, it is seen that the trauma that is experienced by a child is not even intentional, and hence it brings me to the question that what is trauma then? So, trauma is, simply put, trauma is something overwhelming. It's an overwhelming threat, and it is something that takes my system, my nervous system, into a state of flight or fight. And it makes me feel unsafe. It makes me feel off guard. It makes me feel uh, almost paralyzed sometimes, and in a position where I don't know what to do and what is the best choice. And to give some of the more examples of unintentional trauma, one of which was, say, my mother is falling sick. I have often seen clients where growing up, most of them could not experience an intimate relationship with their fathers. Most of them had experiences where their fathers were away, and that was because the role that the father played was bringing resources into the family. Now, again, this is one of those unintentional cases where the father is dutifully playing his role, but the child growing up in this house is constantly feeling the absence of his or her father. And this can be perceived as many different things depending on other environmental factors that are around this child. To also give another example, uh, someone's mother went through a miscarriage or an abortion before the birth of this child, and the mother is still grieving. And sometimes when there is another child immediately after such a intense experience, the mother is internally, emotionally, almost all, she's grieving and she's not there emotionally for the child. So all of this sums up to a point where we need to understand that the emotions that we felt as children, the expression that we needed as children, if that was suppressed due to any overwhelming experience, whether it be intentional or unintentional, if my feelings or my ideas or my ways of life was suppressed because I needed to feel that attachment in my family and I needed to feel the love of my family. If that was suppressed growing up, what happens is we fall into certain conditioned habits, and there's a part of the brain where all of this experience molds itself into a conditioned pattern of habits, and we find ourselves living life in an autopilot when we are an adult. Now, to give an example of this autopilot, it simply means that I follow a routine. It can be any routine. It can be getting up, taking care of the chores in my house, going for a class, a yoga class, coming back, taking care of my garden, and and closing the day. Or it can be me getting up, going to the office, working with some colleagues, coming back, taking care of my house and sleeping. Or it can be for, say, parents out there, it can be taking care of my children and working parallelly. But autopilot essentially means my life going in a pattern of conditioned habits and conditioned patterns, which is leading me to a place where sometimes I feel as if this is the upper limit, as if I have found that space of almost like a dead end where I cannot come out of it or I cannot grow from it. And it is then when, if we step back, we realize that this is a response from some unintentional part of my brain, maybe some events that has happened back in my childhood, something which I don't remember at all, but it is leading me to a place where I feel that I cannot grow from here, or this is the upper limit. So if you find yourself stuck in a place where there is a drive and there is a want to grow, but then you find yourself bogged down with responsibilities of various kinds, and especially parents who hardly find the time to come out of it or grow from it. If you feel that is the case, I would like to tell you that there is a possibility that this is coming from some part of your lived experience and it has blocked you out from your own authentic feelings. So, what can we do, and what is self love then? And how to proceed from here? And maybe I'll now go on to talking about the first step, which I feel is absolutely necessary if we are trying to build the foundation of self love in our lives. The first step here is becoming aware of my feelings and my ways, and becoming aware of the autopilot that I live in, becoming aware of the experiences in my life that has shaped up into this personality that I am today, and becoming aware of ways through which I can come out of it. However, the first step, coming back, the first step is becoming aware of my current autopilot, my current scenario, and becoming aware of what experiences might have led me to be this personality that I am today. Now, this seems very, very daunting to a lot of people, and even even if I look at my journey, how I stepped into this space, it was a very, very difficult experience, because living a life in a certain way for 28, 30, 40 years, and then coming to know that this is coming from a conditioned habit, and I no longer know how I feel, and I no longer know what I truly want and whether I can take a step in that direction. Even though it feels daunting and it feels scary in the beginning, it is okay to feel that way. That is number one. And it is okay to give ourselves some compassion and respect for allowing ourselves to see this in the first place. Changing something which has been the foundation up till now is not something that happens overnight, but it does happen over time. The more and more we become aware and we practice the idea of becoming aware every day in a very we can start in a very small way. For example, taking out 5 minutes where I sit with myself and be in that quiet space of me and my feelings. For parents out there, I would say, trying to get up maybe 10 minutes or 5 minutes before your child wakes up, and just be in that 5 minutes and see how you feel, and maybe start your day with that quiet space with yourself. That can be a beginning, and this is just an example. You can find your own way to begin and find that space where you can be radically honest with yourself, and you can see how you feel about your life, about your days. Is there any aspect in life where you would like to, see a shift, or where you would like to transform or change or bring something new? For that, the first step is to become aware of how I feel and what I need right now and what I want right now. The most difficult part here is to make space for the emotions that come and go during this process. A lot of times growing up, our emotions get suppressed, especially, especially what I've observed is that a lot of anger and a lot of sadness is usually suppressed, because what we hear around us is, be okay, and what is there to be sad and what is there to be angry, and we have constantly received this message to shut that part down and tell ourselves something is wrong, as if something is wrong. However, as adults, we need to create a space where we can allow these emotions to move through, to come up and move through, and allowing ourselves to witness them without any judgment, with compassion, with the knowing that these are my younger versions, and I need to allow this space for them so that I can find that connection back to my authenticity. Now, this is a slow process, and hence, I would, maybe I'm repeating myself, but hence I would say once again that compassion is one of the major things that we need to remember as we dive into this process. All right. So, knowing that self-love is a journey is very important. It is not a one-time thing. It's not a race where you go to the finish line and it's done. Self-love has to be incorporated as a journey in life. And the more and more we take a step towards our own selves, and the more we try to build connection to the lost parts within us, the more and more we see that there is an expansive space within us, and we do have the time to to be whoever we want to be and do the things that truly align with us and align with that inner voice and that inner self. This not only helps us to feel abundant or prosper in life, this truly helps us to grow physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Self expression is the most important part of becoming aware of those lost parts within us, of those disconnected parts within us. Hence, I often tell people to start with journaling, because there are so many people who just say that I don't know, and even if I take out time, I don't get my feelings and I don't understand what I want. Maybe I don't want anything. Maybe I'm here to do this. Whatever responsibilities or obligations uh, you are fulfilling, apart from that, there is something within us that constantly tells us how we feel about these responsibility. How do we feel when we are doing these chores or doing the work? And if there's something off about it, over it, over the period of time, it is gradually seen that it manifests itself into either a physical disease or a depression or a depressive phase, or an emotional low. But it does manifest itself because we as human beings are here to live in alignment with our physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects. So finding a space, coming back to what is the first step is finding a space for your own self. It can start with 5 minutes in a day. And if you're unable to connect to yourself during those 5 minutes, simply start writing your about your feelings. Try to express and do all of this without any judgment. Also know that not knowing is a great place to start with. It is often seen that when we come to a point where we say that I don't know, and maybe there's nothing, and we find ourselves falling back. I often make this point very clear and evident that I don't know is a great place to be in. It is okay to not know and be in that space and remind ourselves again and again that I don't know. Because being radically honest also involves being uncomfortable, not liking sometimes, what I'm feeling, but then nonetheless, allowing myself to feel that way and allow the feeling to move through. So, self love, as I would like to put it, is the unconditional presence of self towards our own feelings, our own ideas, our own thoughts, and looking at it and observing it from a kind lens, from a compassionate lens, and dropping the judgment altogether. This is the first step, the space within from where we can build the foundation of self love. So, I hope this helped you. Thank you so much. Do share your views or questions in the comment section. I will definitely get back. Thank you so much.